Welcome to the after show, everybody.
Okay, we're just going to...
Mark and his guest talked so long before the show, I don't know if there's going to be much left.
Yeah.
There's always something to say.
We're talking with TOPHER WARDS about Autism Village. We were having a conversation before and just going to fill in any gaps. In talking to my friend about it with their child, they were aware, but they were a little resistant, and I felt like it was kind of like when I talked to him about his weight. He was aware. There was a little bit of denial, and, but he had educated himself on it, and he was right at the brink, and I felt like somebody like you could have done a better job of it,
Well, I'll tell you, there's it's interesting. There's a couple points here. We got some excellent counseling from a friend whose wife is a special ed attorney in Connecticut when we were faced with the diagnosis. So, first of all, I think it's fairly common for a parent when you approach a parent to have a certain amount of denial about these things. I mean, a physical disability is sort of undeniable, but a neurological disability, maybe it'll work itself out, or whatever. And I wrote a chapter for sort of one of these chicken soup of the soul type books. It's called Gift of the Hit. And we dealt with what I dealt with in my chapter was, so the whole theory of the book is something terrible happens to you, but something really good comes out of it, right? So my chapter was about the autism diagnosis of my son Kirby at a little less than 2 years old was terrible. But what came out of it was that I got to appreciate Kirby, unfettered, without any kind of a view of what he should be, right? So, and I call that concept, Mark, the future child. So when we have children, when that child pops into the world, we already as parents have some idea that it's going to be a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist or a fireman or it's going to follow in our footsteps as a great software program, whatever it is, who knows, but we create a future child. And then most of us kill off future child over the course of 30 years, for our parents with like death by 1,000 cuts. And so our parents have 30 years of our life to realize that we aren't going to be what they thought we were going to be. And then to say, Mark's all right. I kind of like him, actually. He's nothing like I thought he was going to be, right? That's like kind of the typical future child experience. But when you get a special needs diagnosis, when you get a kid with a physical disability, or disability of any kind, future child is dead on arrival, right? And people mourn differently. And of course, when you have a neurological disability like autism that's invisible, you could just one reaction to this is just to deny it. Like my kid's going to be okay. So we talked about that a lot in this chapter. The good news is that once you accept it, then you can enjoy that child every day for what they do and who they grow and who they come into.
Well, whether or not there's a problem or something's perceived as a problem with a child, it's almost a parent's job to say, not my child, no matter what it is, whether it's a broken window or whatever, not my Johnny, he wouldn't do that. It just seems like an age-old reflex. But you talked about something, and I know there's no way we're going to sit in this tiny room and solve this problem, but you talked about the incredibly high divorce rate amongst couples with autistic children. If you had to wave a magic wand or you had a checkbook, how would you fix that or minimize it?
I don't know that it's, I don't know that I can come up with an easy response to that, because certainly whenever you're raising a child with special needs, you've got financial stress. But you also have personal relationship stress. You've got two parents dealing with exactly this scenario we talked about, the death of future child, maybe very differently. One's in denial, one's accepting, one's on a crusade to find a cause or a cure, and the other's real practical. Let's just make today better. it really creates a multidimensional problem for couples. And I don't know that there's one obvious way to fix it. I mean, the divorce, I can't recall, but I think somebody said the divorce rate overall is 50% or something, right? But of course some people divorce quite late or whatever. But so, that's sort of proof that it's already tough to get two people together and stay together. But you add one of these stressors, 3 or 4 stressors, financial, unexpected burden of the child, so forth. I think it's tough, Mark.
Are your statistics broken down at all for the age groups of the people getting divorced?
No, I don't have any data for, couples divorcing at what age the couples are generally.
I think I'm just looking for a way to blame young people again. I think that's where I was going with that.
Well, you could try that.
Yeah. I was just wondering if under 30, if it's higher, because I think that, I mean, another unpopular after show idea is, I think that I think everything should have an age limit on it. Like getting a fishing license, a pilot license, or whatever. And I think that to get a marriage license, you should be at least some number, 21, 25 or something,
Well,
let your brain form.
Well, it's funny. My wife and I debate a lot about whether. So we waited a little longer, probably. Some of our friends were married with children a little younger than we were and stuff, and so we joke a lot about whether it's better to be old and wise or young and energetic. I think that I think at the end of the day, the real problem here on the divorce rate with any kind of a special needs child, and certainly the case in the autism situation, is essentially dad says, I'm going to throw rocks at my own gender here, but the men say, wow, I just did not sign up for this. I'm sorry. Being married sounded great. Having kids sounded great. I didn't mind being the provider, but I definitely didn't sign up for this. Right. And so, whereas mom at any age, really, I mean, we've seen some very young moms that have the energy and the passion, and they're raising these kids and they're doing great. And we've seen, likewise, ones that are very unsuccessful. Same at the older end of the spectrum. But in general, the mother instinct is there. They're more nurturing and they're more patient no matter what the child's challenges are. And I think some of that's just human nature.
I think there's a deeper connection between a mother and a child, just because the mother does a lot of heavy lifting, for lack of a better term.
Well, she certainly got 9 months of intimate familiarity more than dad does all the time, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, dad just gets woke up in the middle of the night inconveniently, or whether mom's going through physiological changes. So there is that bond there.
It is fun. It is funny for me to be in the minority, right? So most of your autism crusaders, the fact that you found a guy to be on your show is actually quite unlikely, right? Most of your autism crusaders, you're great. The people that are running the big nonprofits, the people that are spearheading research, the people that are teaching, so forth, they're all women.
I didn't even think about that till you said that. I just thought in our brief conversation that I thought that you spoke real well and you educated me about it. And I knew a little bit. I wanted you to educate, but I didn't even think about that. You probably are the minority, because in many of things, the crusaders are women that are going out and passionately crusading for change in one thing or another. Now I think about are women, and maybe we've discovered something here that men tend to be lazier and unenthusiastic. Maybe we've made a finding.
I don't know that I don't know if that would categorize as a finding with most women, but
what would give you that idea?
Well, we could have a government study and spend a couple $100,000.
Yeah, we could do that. That sounds like fun.
Remember that the other challenge is that all the services for these guys that are government funded, that have the support that these families have and this army of single moms has, all evaporates when the children are 21. So once they become adult age, you've got a next challenge. And we're facing this in our economy. We have 7 million now and growing. So what's that? 10% of the, 2.5% of the population, something like that. 2.5% of the population and growing, right? That need a future, need a way to live, need a way to support. Some may be able to support themselves. Some may always have to live with parents. These families probably aren't able to save at a level that would create, an ongoing future. So, this population and how we manage them as adults, from a social standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a government services standpoint, this is going to become a major issue, in our world.
What seems silly to me when you said it there, I just thought why are we applying a chronological age number to them when they are under other limitations? That's a best case scenario age that we use generically across the board. And I mean, everybody that turns 21 is not 21 in their mind. I just turned 21 like 3 years ago. So in my mind, and again, we're back to that male statistic. We are, not that we're here to bash guys, but we tend to be a little less mature than we should be. We're not always at our numbers,
Well, it's interesting on the scouting side, as an example, in the Baltimore area, they have a number of troops. So the Boy Scouts of America have a policy that says that if you have a boy with a neurological disability diagnosis, that they don't age out of scouting when they're 18. They can continue to be a scout for their entire lives. So I met a guy, 52 years old, and he had been working on getting his through his ranks and getting up to Eagle Scout rank since he was, 9 years old, and had just accomplished that. And in the Baltimore area, there are a number. They were real sort of path forging troops, and now their boys are now adults in their 50s and 60s, some of them. And so, to your point, the BSA recognized that age isn't the issue here, and let's give these folks time. And as a result, that program, which is very life skill centric, the first 3 ranks in scouting is all about life skills, and the second 3 ranks is all about leadership. So this is a great program for special needs kids because it helps them to develop basic skills, to cook a meal, to clean the dishes, to whatever it is. So letting that go on past the age of 18 has been great. Having said that, our government, that we have to use arbitrary dates for government services and funding and so forth. And how we talk about the challenges of funding Social Security for the population at large. Now imagine that we've got a small percentage of the population, but growing, a material, growth in this segment, that are going to need a lot of social services as adults. Their parents are going to die, and they're not going to be able to leave them with that nest egg that's going to support them. And many of them are not going to be able to support themselves or live on their own. And certainly the institutionalization of the 40s and 50s isn't something that we want to return to. So exactly what are we going to do? It's a big question.
I like to think things out and think forward, but I've never thought about that in terms of autism. I've thought about similar on the other end. I've thought about it with people with dementia, and I've thought about baby boomers getting dementia. And, I don't know how you or I would determine that we are getting something, because I've dealt with lots of cases of it. And sometimes on certain days, I see a little bit of it in myself in the mirror, You go through that thing where you walk into a room and you go, why am I in here? It'll come to me, or something. And it just happens sometimes. And you wonder, how are we going to deal with that? I've thought about it with missing persons, because it's going to just overwhelm the system, because you're going to have healthier people physically, mentally, that aren't there, that can, and we see it now, that can just go out and walk further and go further. We see people in more fuel efficient cars that have dementia that are able to drive to Oregon in 2.5 days